Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation, back with yet another episode. This week, I'm going to talk to you about how I used a Portajohn to get to the Big Island. That's right. So stay tuned for more updates on that. Really, what this is all about is about control. And I'm going to talk to you today, a little story, a little anecdote for you about control, because very often as endurance athletes, what we run into is a conflict of interest, conflict of motivations. And it's very hard to hit the stop button on purpose. More often than not, life hits the stop button for us. We run out of time in the day. We actually can't actually do something on a day. Our body breaks down. There's a conflict. There's bad weather, whatever it may be. Our life is full of other elements pushing buttons. But when a push comes to shove, at the end of the day, you are in charge of that button, and you have to be willing to hit that button. So let me take you back. Let me take you back to Ironman Coeur. The only time I've done that race, in 2007. Going out there to race, looking to qualify, feeling pretty good, but had a little bit of a fender bender here on the East Coast. Got sort of sideswiped by someone on their way home from work. Later in the day, had my kids in the back of the car, a little freaky, and ended up not being able to really sleep for a couple of weeks. Had whiplash, just bad. Nothing broken, but just was shooken up, and really couldn't train for the last couple of weeks into Coeur d'Alene. So I was going out there with high expectations, but just not feeling great, right? Just wasn't in my zone. Ironically, as you'll see as the story progresses, that I was actually fairly well rested, right? And so being rested meant I could actually perform. So that was great. So going through the day, swim, bike, run. Swim is freezing cold. Come out of the water. You guys who've done Coeur d'Alene, you know it. Did the first loop. By the end of the first loop, my hands were just sort of balling into fists. By the second loop, they were just like totally useless, like stumps. I made it out of the water just about, got on the beach, and went to try to go to the wetsuit strippers, but turned around 3 times. I was so dizzy from the cold water that I couldn't really orient myself. I think they were a little worried about me, but they let me get up, and somehow I found my way to my bike, got out on my bike. Couldn't feel my hands or my feet for probably the first hour or so. Swim was okay, nothing flashy. Got on the bike and was like, okay, time to start eating and drinking. I knew I needed to eat early, despite the fact that I was cold, because it was, big day, long day. Had a bunch of friends out on the course, which was kind of neat, and was able to get out there and, kind of put in a good pace and felt pretty good. Nothing spectacular. I was still riding a road bike that was retrofitted for a triathlon at the time, all that awesomeness. But it was really starting to, get into a groove on the bike, especially once I started warming up. This is the old Coeur d'Alene course, which I think was a lot more fun and interesting than the new Coeur d'Alene course. So lots of rolling hills, lots of opportunities to kind of see the competition in front of you, work off of them. And by that point in time, I knew a couple of folks sort of in the mix with me, and I came off the bike feeling pretty good. I was like, okay, I'm in a pretty good spot here, and I think I can do well. So start to the run. Get out of transition. Here we go. There's a guy next to me. We're running along. Beep. Watch goes off. Right. Look at my watch, and I look at the time, and I say, "This is not right. Something's not right. Satellites out of order. What's going on here?" Right. I was hoping to run like 7:30s to 8, somewhere in that range, and my watch beeped, and it was 6:30. I was like, I must have hit the button wrong, right? Or they put something that's not right. Like I must have done something wrong here, because that possibly can't be right. Maybe it's the satellites are off, even though they weren't off for anything else this whole day. They had been off the week that I was there. So I'm not sure what that was about. So I turned to the guy next to me. I'm like, hey man, what was that first mile split? I'm like, it wasn't 6:30, was it? He's like, it was 6:30. This is amazing. And I was like, this is not amazing. Inside my head, my inner monologue was like, this is disaster. So I was a little out and back there next to the lake. So went out, turned around about a mile and a half, came back. When I came back, there was an aid station just outside of transition. So I walked the full length of the aid station, like literally one side to the other side, walked the whole thing. I mean, I was kind of briskly walking, but I said, I have to disconnect myself from this guy. I can't run with this person, and that's too fast. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get myself square. I'm good. Here we go. Come out of this and start running. I was able to run a little bit more of a pace, but by, at this time in Coeur d'Alene, that time of day, things 2:00 starts to get, it's still hot. You're feeling not a lot of shade going out by the lake. And I was kind of feeling all right, but not 100%. And I was kind of cruising along. So fast forward, come back in again, 2-loop course, head back out again. It's about mile 15, high-fiving people in town, etc. Heading out. I don't feel so good. Like I feel kind of woozy, and my stomach's off. And I'm looking at the watch saying, I'm coming up on like mile 16 here, mile 17. I've got like 10 more miles, 9 more miles to go. I'm like, I got to just gut down. Like I can see people pulling away from me. I don't feel good. I've just been, kind of in race mode and not really in my own zone. All of a sudden we come to another aid station, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to eat? What am I going to do here? And that's when I decided to hit the button. I hit the button and I went right over to the Portajohn, walked inside the Portajohn, didn't have to go, walked inside the Portajohn and closed the door and just stood there and started taking deep breaths. Not a great idea inside a Portajohn, especially not on a 95-degree day in Coeur d'Alene on the side of an Ironman course. But I was in trouble. I had been racing and was in my race mindset, and I was not in control of the process that was unfolding on the day. It had gotten away from me. I was focused more on outcomes, trying to be performance based, trying to chase people that I knew based off of the first lap, where they were on the second lap. I was getting really racy. It wasn't time to be racy. I've been kind of too racy for too long. I'd gone too early with the race mode and wasn't in control of my day. And I know that bad process equals bad results. So I had to go back. I had to eject from the process and restart. I spent 2.5 minutes inside that Portajohn, probably the worst 2.5 minutes in a Portajohn ever, because I didn't have to go. But I came out, I walked the aid station, water on my head, etc., reset, started eating, and then started going again. And then, new people around me, new perspective, had to run out 2.5 miles, had to flip it, had to come back, and then had to do the run into town. Was able to stay in control. And strangely enough, some of the people that I had been chasing had started to crack, right? Because I took myself out of that process, so I didn't crack early, and they were cracking because they were pushing. And I was able to pass a few people and get to the finish line, finish strong. And sure enough, ended up like 7th in the age group and got a roll down slot. Remember those days? Got a roll down slot to Kona and took it. And I was proud of that race. I think some people were like, "Hey, you got a roll down slot like Kona? I mean, come on! Like you didn't even have a great race, and you're going to go to Kona, etc." But I was actually really proud of that race, and that was a very formative, like a foundational moment in my race experience as an endurance athlete. Was saying, if I'm not in control of myself, if I'm not in control of this process on race day, then I'm not in control of the outcome either. In order to get to the desired outcome, I have to be in charge of my process. And I really enforced it on that day. And ever since then, I've had no problem in any race walking. This is my last one in 2019, Ironman Arizona. Ended up winning my age group, barely. Some great competition out there. And mile 1 of the run went to the Portajohn. 90 seconds. Boy, I had to pee so bad on that course. I'm not sure what that was about. 90 seconds in that Portajohn before I got out. But I had to take care of it. I didn't want to chase someone then. It wasn't worth it. Those early miles, pushing hard, getting into race mode, not worth it, because that's not my process. That's the race process. That's other people. That's urgency. That's external stimuli forcing its way in, and not the way that I want to race, and not the way that you should race too. So instead of ending up like me, trying to put yourself in a Portajohn and thinking that's a really good idea. That's how bad things are. When you think going into a Portajohn for no real reason is a good idea. So let's talk about how you regain control. How do you learn from this lesson from me on the side of the road, ejecting, saving my day, coming out, getting a spot for Kona, and find a better way to do that on your side. So I got a couple pointers for you here today. Okay. Number 1, just start in control. Like start with knowing what the process is and having essentially a flow chart for your day. Right? Know exactly what you want to do in the race scenario so you can be successful. This is why inside Endurance Nation, we write out race plans. So you actually know, what are you supposed to be doing? What's it supposed to feel like? What are you doing next after what you're doing right now? What are the markers for you? What are the benchmarks for you? What are the numbers we're looking at on the dial? Make sure that you're in the right zones for, heart rate, power, pace, RPE, whatever that may be. We define that process early when we don't have race brain going on. So we understand what a good process is and we can follow that process, right? Just like having an emergency protocol, we don't create emergency protocols during an emergency. Like, what should we do next time we have this problem? It's like, I don't know. We're in the middle of this problem. Let's solve it. So same thing here with racing. Don't make the plan in the race itself for next time. Race your race and understand that when we're preparing for our next event, we're going to put that plan together. We're going to lay it all out, right? We have a template inside the team. You can write out that whole race, send it to your teammates, get the review, get back, etc. So start in control, okay? And we can do this, actually, when we boil down, take it out of race day for a second, and we can talk about how we implement this into your training as well. So start each week, start each month, start each cycle, start in control. Know what your goals are, know what your process is to get to those goals, and then start with that process. The longer you can maintain your process, the better your outcomes are. It's like a train trying to get, to the destination on time. If the first couple stops are on time, the odds of those last few stops being on time increase every single time, right? If the first couple stops are already off, you're going to be in trouble. Not a lot of making up time later, and not a lot of making up magic in a race or in a training block as a part of your season, right? You always start smart. Right. The second thing I want you to think about is forcing reps, not forcing days. Okay. So what people will end up doing inside their training cycles and also on race day is they force themselves into this space. They say, I've just got to get this done. Like I've got to force to, Monday didn't work. I got to make it happen on Tuesday. I got to jam my Tuesday together. I'm going to work out in the morning and the night. You start forcing your weeks like that. Don't force your days. Okay. Force your reps. I'd much rather you have an awesome Tuesday If you had Monday off, let's say Monday was a disaster. Work, everything went wrong. It didn't get to do your Monday session. So what happens? It means you're more rested for Tuesday. Force Tuesday. Have a great Tuesday. Maybe, instead of doing an hour, you do an hour and 10, right? Maybe instead of hitting, 95%, you hit like 98% or 100%. You got a little extra gas in the tank. Force those reps. Have great reps. Build great reps. Build great discipline. But understand that's detached from what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday is past. What's past is past. What's done is done. Focus on making this session better. When you start forcing days and you start cramming Thursday and a Friday or Thursday and Friday and a Saturday and Sunday, or putting sessions and combining sessions so that your Friday swim is a mega swim or whatever, you start forcing days together, you're defying the physiological limitations of your body as it understands your training over a concept of time. Putting 2 days of training into 1 day looks good on paper. Your body's like, that's not good for my body. That's not good for me. I don't like it. It's going to hurt me. It's going to set me back, and I'm going to end up missing days in the future. That's why we always talk about making decisions today that keep you on track for tomorrow. If you're going to do a session today that's going to make you stop tomorrow because you can't do tomorrow, then you really have to ask yourself, is today's session worth it? If it's going to stop you from tomorrow, it probably isn't, right? Unless it's a key session or it's a race or whatever it may be. But if it's just a regular training session and you're going over the top and you're ruining tomorrow, no good, right? Okay, great. So next up, know the line of work, right? This is really important. We bring this from race day. We talk about race day has the line. For us in an Ironman, it's mile 18. In a marathon, it's like mile 20. Depending on your race, it's in different places inside our protocols for Endurance Nation. Even for you, for the work, understand that when, like last week, say you did mile intervals on the run, you did 3 by 1 mile. And this week, you're going to do 3 by a quarter mile, right? You know you can do 3 miles of work. And when you're doing 3 by 1.25 miles, you know that when you hit the 3 mile mark, you've got 3/4 of a mile left to do of work. That's where the magic happens. That last rep, the last half of that last rep is where the magic happens for you. That's where we need you to be strong and steady. That's where it really matters. So know the line. So you're doing the work to get you to the line to where the work actually impacts you and changes your physiology or yields those results, like in my race story. That's what we want to do. So we want to differentiate just training hard to be like, I'm going to go great on this first interval, 10 by 3 minutes, and you do the first 3 great and the last 7 are terrible. That's not a great training session. You can check the box. The computer or your AI coach may say, it's green. You did 10 sessions. That's great. Those aren't great sessions. That's not great sessions. We want you to finish strong. You have to know the line and you have to know where the work happens, because where the work happens, that's where the fitness happens. That's where you get strong. And building that deliberate muscle repeatedly through training days, through training weeks, through training blocks makes you better and more prepared to make great decisions on race day when it matters the most. Okay. Another thing that I think is really important is having a reset day. Just like I had a reset moment inside that Portajohn, you also need a reset day during your week. Now, not everyone trains on a 7-day cycle, but it's easy to do it that way as well. So for me, my reset day is Sunday. Sunday's the day when I get to Sunday, I say, well, if I have to put something here because I wasn't able to do it earlier, I took an earlier rest day, I can put it in there and figure it out. But either way, I'm resetting mentally as I head into that next week. And if I need a rest day heading into next week, I'll take that rest day, even if I don't want to take that rest day, because I know it's going to help me keep going. That's my mental switch, my mental reset, and say, this week is transitioning into next week. I'm at this intersection. I have to reset inside of this space. You have to have space inside your week where you can actually do that. When the workouts start dictating what you're doing with your days, when the demands of your upcoming race are changing how you're modifying your training plan to make it more aggressive, to catch up, to do more work, to overcome some of the race anxiety. Maybe the fitness isn't exactly where you want, or the body composition isn't exactly where you want. When you start forcing those things into your spaces like that, you lose the reset day. You lose the elasticity in your week. And that elasticity is really important. There's a time in a race or in a key session where we have to run into that point and we don't have a choice. We've got to cram, you were planning on 3 miles in 24 minutes and you've got to do 3 miles in, 23 minutes and 27 seconds. You need to cram those miles into a less period of time. You got to get that work done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the time to do it. The rest of the time, we feel this urgency. We feel as though we have to make it all happen and get it all done. But in reality, our body doesn't really differentiate between stress from work or stress at home or emotional stress and workout stress. Sure, maybe your quads feel differently after an argument than they do after an interval workout. But regardless, your body's full of cortisol and there's stress and a need to recover from that. And that reset day during the week allows you to sort of step back, review what's happened, and make a smart decision heading forward. The more smart weeks you can put together, the better off you'll be. And the larger percentage of your brain you're using on a regular basis with regards to your training, with pacing yourself with deliberate effort, the stronger you're going to be on race day, because you've developed the familiarity, you've developed the skill of staying in charge, making smart decisions over and over. I kind of gave away the last one, but I'll just touch on it really briefly, which is making sure there's a review point. Inside Endurance Nation, default review point is once a month, but you can also review every week if you so desire. The real point here is to create micro opportunities for you to step back, take a pause, and say, what is working, what isn't working. But you do this all the time. We manage our finances like that. We get notifications on our phone all the time, but we don't think about it for our bodies. We don't think about, how can I make sure that I'm staying on track? How can I make sure that I'm making good decisions and I can support the good decisions and get rid of the bad decisions, right? So by operating on a microcycle, well, what that allows us to do is to make lots of small adjustments, just like you would, for example, when you're sighting in an open water swim. If you only check in once a month or you never check in, you're basically getting in the lake, putting your head down and swimming, and you're just hoping you get to where you want to be. Top open water swimmers, competent open water swimmers know you got to sight every third or fourth stroke. Why? Because I can just make a 1 inch or a 2 inch adjustment and I'll always stay on track. Super easy, just small adjustments. If I swam for half an hour with my head down, God knows where I would end up, probably injured somewhere. And I'm not going to be where I want to be. I haven't developed the skill set of making small decisions. And I've lost out on this opportunity to make sure that not only this session, but future sessions and future races are better by building in the mental capacity to be familiar with taking a breath, reorienting myself, and getting back to work. Okay. So you can avoid the porta potty plan, which is not a part of Endurance Nation, not in any one of our 85 training plans available to our members, not any part of our protocols or anything else, but is the last ditch opportunity for you to say, stop. I need to reboot. I need to regain control of what I'm doing. And you don't have to be as dramatic as me, as Coach Patrick. You can learn these lessons long before I did, or learn from my mistakes. Understand that staying in control, making sure that you're making smart decisions, knowing where the line of work is, forcing reps, not forcing days, staying on top of your training sessions, on top of your training load, allows you to remain consistent over time. That consistency adds up and makes you stronger. So I look forward to seeing you at your next race, not in a Portajohn. And I look forward to hearing your story about how you've regained control. Let me know on the social medias. Otherwise, for those of you on the team, tell me in the Geneva chat. I'd love to hear from you and tell me exactly how things work for you and where you have, in this first quarter of the year, regained control to make sure that you're staying on track. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode, especially that part about the Portajohn, which I still have such visceral memories of. And I'll talk to you soon.